one of the most important points is that some folks have habit of failure. Like, some of the time, they just don't think that anybody understands them. They think it's this cultural thing that we've created, that everybody's so unique, has made it difficult for people to notice when their problem is archetypical, where it's a traditional thing that people go through with maturity. When people find out there is no Santa and there is no Easter Bunny, perhaps that's a disillusionment. And maybe in the modern world, people are not very good at when their illusions fall. They stay in irritation or they stay in resentment instead of getting all the way to acceptance and totally adapting and finding a happy spot. So sometimes this has to do with relationships. You remember the case that we talk about in training of the woman who was about 67 years old and came into my office, and she told me her husband died and she was sobbing. And she was with her daughter, and being the guy that I was at the time, I was still a relatively naive young man. And it was like a half an hour before it occurred to me to ask when he died. And I was a little weirded out because the whole time the daughter was rolling her eyes as her mom was talking. I thought it was weird. And then the woman said, well, he died 27 years ago. And I looked at the daughter, and the daughter went, And it turned out this woman had been to many, many counselors, many, many grief specialists, clergy, every kind of person. And I just got lucky. It wasn't particularly anything on my part. I just happened to have been reading a book that had a concept in it. And I said to her, in order to be a good person, how long is it appropriate to grieve? And she said, I don't know. And I said, well, that's clear. I said, like 10 minutes? No. Like a day? No. Like a week? No. How about 27 years? And she said, it seems kind of long. And even though I did 5 sessions with her, the belief that was in the way is, in order to be a good person, I must grieve. There's another belief in the way there. In order to be a good person, I must only love that guy. In other words, she wasn't free to replace him. So and that went on for 27 years. Now, what happens to this client is, all of a sudden, sympathy seems like love, because she's getting sympathy from family members. She's getting sympathy from all over the place. And the nervous system starts to think that sympathy is love. Not that love is love, but that sympathy is love. And so you end up with, instead of a need for love or a need for acceptance, you end up with a need for sympathy. Well, this is an epidemic. This need for sympathy is an epidemic. This confusion that sympathy and love are the same thing is an epidemic. And so when clients come in who've been to a lot of other folks who are very well-meaning and sometimes have really done good things for them, the reason that the client is not changing is that their need has changed from a solution to this need for sympathy. That's one reason. There are others, of course. But it's a very difficult job to teach a young hypnotists or therapists of any kind or clergy how to give empathy and consideration without accidentally getting sucked into a sympathetic position. So the other issue with these people that think they're so different is they're really proving themselves right. See, it had to be this way. They don't know that they're doing that. Some of them do. So the question is how to prove through the actions that happen during the session, how to prove through the actual evidence that is in front of them, and have them actually receptive to that evidence. And that's what that fixation, relaxation, repetition, and being in a different pattern and environment give a unique opportunity to make points that were just bouncing off that individual at other times.
So this common belief in the self-help industry or in the help industry is that everybody has everything they need inside them in the first place. And we really look at things quite differently because we see that people actually do need feedback. They need to have a different frame put around what they're doing or a pattern interruption. And sometimes people who look at hypnosis as that rapport is a very important part of hypnosis have a hard time wrapping their mind around this because sometimes we really need to break rapport to get a point across or to get them to shake things up enough to see things differently.
Yeah, think about it like this. What's inside of us is like organs and pus and brain matter and goo and blood. What's inside of us is not answers. The answers are literally all around us, and they are perceived with our senses from outside of us, whether it's emulating another person or rehearsing. What's the best way to change in the world is rehearsing the new way you want to do it over and over again. And so this misconception that we're proving ourselves permanently, like we're permanently adolescent, it's very unfortunate that entire concept has happened.